So I don't know what can of worms I'm about to open, but I want to get the artifact lands unbanned for Modern. Everyone, this is Nikachu Merfolk Master, and you know, the one weird thing that I always saw on the banned list is the damn artifact lands, these weird artifact lands. And you know what? In retrospect, if I look back at like 2013, 2014, 2015, when artifacts were like, you know, Affinity was like a terrorizing Modern, I guess maybe they might be a little strong, but here's the thing. When you look at the old Affinity deck, it's got things like Ink Moth Nexus and Blink Moth Nexus. Now those two are very important cards. They're creature lands that can attack you, or if your opponent gains like 200 life, the Ink Moth Nexus could kill you with cranial plating attached. So they're very strategically valuable. Not to mention, one of the best parts of being Affinity is that you're a 5-color deck. You have access to the whole range of sideboard cards, or any card in Magic the Gathering, thanks to Mox Opal, Glimmer Void, and Spire of Industry. So those lands, Glimmer Void and Spire of Industry, very important key pieces to the overall Affinity strategy. So what exactly are you going to take out for these artifact lands? Because they only tap for one color. So I think even back then, I don't even know how dangerous they would be. Because then if you remove the creature lands, then you have these artifact lands, and you're going to lose in all sorts of scenarios where you needed that, when you needed that the man land. Then if you take out Glimmer Void and Spire of Industry, now you are more restricted on what cards you're allowed to play in your sideboard. You're not a 5-color deck anymore, and I think that was one of the greatest advantages to being able to play Affinity. So, and now, you know, so much time has changed. We've got haymakers in Modern like Karn the Great Creator and Collector Oof, in addition to Stony Silence. Not to mention, Mox Opal is banned, people. So now I'm looking at these artifact lands. Is it time to take the artifact lands off the banned list? And make no mistake, I actually think this channel has contributed to the banning of Mox Opal. I do believe, I'm like 65% confident that this channel had a hand to play in getting Mox Opal banned. So since I've stolen the soul out of Affinity players, the least I can do is at least stir some discussion about the artifact lands. But then that's the thing, I want to have a discussion about it. I'm not completely sold that this has to happen, but what are the dangers? And so, like, I'm throwing ideas out on Twitter and on Facebook to get some feedback. Maybe there's something somebody knows that I don't. But overall, I'm not really convinced by the arguments. You know, for example, people, you know, point to Standard. And frankly, that's baloney. It's all complete baloney. Standard doesn't matter when you look at the context of Modern. For how long was Jace the Mind Sculptor banned? For absolutely no reason whatsoever. How long was Stoneforge Mystic banned? For no reason whatsoever. Those cards could have came off day one, especially even during like the Splinter Twin Birthing Pod era. They had no business to be on the ban list. Modern is too hostile for those cards. So, and I actually see it the same way for Affinity. Like, Modern is really, really strong. People are saying, well, you know, Nikachu, aren't you scared of the 0-mana 2/2 Frogmites and the Mirror Enforcers? The 4/4 Mirror Enforcers, they're gonna get you, Nikachu. They're gonna get you. No, I'm not scared of these things. Like seriously, even if you could get a Mirror Enforcer out on turn 2, that is meaningless in Modern right now. You can die to 1,000,000 creatures. Nobody cares about your Mirror Enforcer. So, yeah, the Standard environment, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced those decks are so much more busted than what a modern day Affinity deck was already doing, even in their heyday. Not to mention, they have very serious competition to face right now. let's be serious. If you make your entire mana base artifact lands, then you are dead to Collector Oath or Stony Silence or Karn the Great Creator if it gets out in time. You are just stone dead. In the past, at least the Affinity deck could use their lands with like a Glimmer Void, for example, to exile Stony Silence if necessary. They had some resistance. They could keep playing in some manner. But if your deck is now just 100% artifact lands, turn to Stony Silence. That's it. You're cleaned up. You're done. Whatever's on the board, that's it, and there's no way you can improve the game because you can't tap your artifact lands for mana anymore. So I mean, you might get a little bit of boost in something like Arcbound Ravager, but like you're just way more vulnerable than you ever were before in Modern, thanks to now these harsh artifact hate cards. So like how many of them do you want to fill up in your deck? And certainly you don't have to fill the entire deck with these things. You could choose to play maybe 2 colors, play those lands, and then still play your Inkmoth and Blinkmoth Nexus alongside it. I don't know what the perfect builds are, but you're still going to be way more vulnerable than you ever have been if you're going to be filling your deck with these artifact lands. And another thing, like people say, well, Arcbound Ravager is just going to be too powerful. Like, look, what does that even mean? Arcbound Ravager was also already super powerful in the Hardened Scales Affinity versions of Affinity. Very, very effective. They were just churning artifacts out like no tomorrow and building up a giant hangerback walker and sacrificing it and making a million artifacts to sacrifice to the Ravager. Let's be serious, the artifact lands are not going to contribute a whole lot. It's not Mox Opal. Mox Opal can at least Mox Opal, sack to Ravager, play another Mox Opal, sack to Ravager. Aha! Third Mox Opal, sack to Ravager. The artifact lands just 1 land per turn. That's all you can do. It's not going to get better than that. Some people are complaining about a potential turn 1 Emery. I don't know how that's going to be possible unless you're playing with 0 mana artifacts on turn 1, so which means you're more or less an Affinity deck anyway, which might be okay. But I mean, if you play Seat of Sidnod, I believe that's what it's called, turn 1, your Emery is reduced by 1, which means it only costs 2, but you still have to tap the thing for mana. You don't have enough mana. Basically, I don't know how you're getting these turn 1 Emerys in play unless you're playing with a bunch of other 0 mana artifacts. I mean, okay, it's true. You have, what's it called, Mishra's Bauble is still in the format, so that's possible. I don't know if that's going to be the end of the world, even if an Urza deck was playing them. So let's get to some maybe real potential arguments against the artifact lands, and the first one might be, it could take Urza over the top. Now, Urza doesn't really benefit from the artifact lands themselves, but Urza comes into play with that construct token. That construct token can be huge now. If an Urza deck is playing with dominantly artifact lands, then that construct token easily is always like a 6/6, a 7/7, an 8/8, pending the board state, pending how long the game has gone. It could be really, really big for almost no reason. If you get a turn 3 Urza in play, we could be looking at like a 5/5 construct token, and I mean that's pretty serious. It's pretty large, and it'll get bigger for every artifact land that enters the battlefield. Not to mention, those Urza decks can dodge Karn, Collector Oof, and Stony Silence, because Urza can just still tap the artifact for blue mana. It's not actually tapping or activating the land. Urza just has an activated ability of tapping artifacts and adding blue mana. So maybe it would put the Urza deck over the top. Maybe. It would still have to be seen for sure, but potentially that could be a concern. It could be a concern. Another really interesting argument was surrounding the design space of future cards coming from R&D, because they would have to always look back at the artifact lands and say, would this break the artifact lands? Like, could we make this? Would the artifact lands combined with this like break Modern, and we have to like reban the artifact lands? And I mean, that's possible. That's possible. Maybe it creates unknown problems in the future that we don't want to get into. Not to mention, like, people did consider the price of these artifact lands right now. I don't think that matters. That's not part of the discussion. Price shouldn't be part of the discussion whatsoever, especially since Wizards, at their discretion, can just reprint all the artifact lands, you know, in some special set. But it would suck. Everyone's buying into the artifact lands, even say for $3 each, and then one day they get banned. It would be pretty annoying. Oh, or if they were so important to the metagame, I don't know, everyone's playing them. But you can't just play it for nothing, all right? There is a cost to this thing. It's an artifact, for crying out loud. There's so much artifact hate in Modern. There's so many ways to strip mine yourself, or getting strip mined by your opponent. Ever heard of Ancient Grudge? Ancient Grudge, your artifact land. Flashback, Ancient Grudge, the next artifact land. GG, easy game. Almost every deck has access to this stuff. Nature's Claim, Disenchant. There's a lot of ways of blowing up the artifacts in Modern. Kolaghan's Command your land and your creature. Take that, Frogmite and artifact land. So you're just increasing your vulnerability with these artifact lands, and I don't know if there is enough that compensates for that. Like, it would have to be big. You can't say like Affinity is just gonna like take over the metagame all of a sudden because they're at 0%. They have nothing. They have absolutely nothing. They're all dead. They're all miserable. They're looking for new jobs. The moderators have left to other forums. So like Affinity needs some help. So you can't say that just adding the artifact lands by themselves is going to turn Affinity from like a 0%er to like tier 0. I think that's a bit silly, especially with so much hate already in Modern against artifacts. Both, you know, we're talking Urza, Stony Silence, Collector Oof, and then just generic artifact hate cards that can blow up their lands. So even an Urza deck might be in trouble if they're going to be playing artifact lands because they're going to be vulnerable to anyone blowing them up. I think that's a big deal. Not to mention, like, whoever gets the Karn out first would be a big deal because you get your Karn out and your opponent can no longer tap their lands for mana. Like, do you see the problems? It's not so easy. It's not a free land. I think that's one thing that people need to understand. When you put this land in your deck, it is in no way a free advantage. There is serious downside to playing this thing. So in my opinion, the greatest argument against unbanning the artifact lands is just some unknown combo that is waiting to be seen. There's just some unknown combo that we don't know about. But I don't know. I don't know all the possibilities with these artifact lands. And, you know, that's in some way, I'm putting this out on the internet, letting everyone know. Would you unban these artifact lands? Is it okay? Is there some danger that you can see that the rest of the world can't? Like, especially since, I can't either. I'm not 100% certain about this, but people can't just say, well, Arcbound Ravager is going to be too strong, because right now it's unplayable, so it's putting artifact lands in the deck at least will just make it playable. But you have to admit that there's serious consequences to just adding these lands to your deck. I mean, you can very easily just die to anything. But it might open up some interesting design space. Like maybe Ensoul Artifact all of a sudden can be like a pretty serious Modern playable contender. I'm not sure. Maybe Shrapnel Blast can see some play. You know, there's, I think, unique possibilities here. I never thought that these cards really should have been on the banned list in the first place. And now with like Affinity just drilled into the ground, maybe now is the time to bring them off the list. But I don't know what can of worms I'm opening here, so I'm bringing it out to you. Would you unban the artifact lands in Modern? Let me know in the comments section below. This has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, talking about these artifact lands to get unbanned in Modern.